Hello. I should be live now. I wasn't live before. I mean, I was in the house, but I was doing other things. Hi, I'm Lee. Not very technologically aware sometimes, I guess, but that's all right. I didn't do anything different this week. I set up the stream ahead of time. I come in here. Definitely did not say click to go live, but I was live anyway, so thanks. Anyway, that's been deleted. This is all brand new. You never saw the other thing. It's all fine. Hi, I'm Lee. I'm a hypnotist. I've been doing hypnosis for a while. And on Sundays, I come on here live to chat about hypnosis, to do things that work for us. Sometimes they work better than others. And we'll just see what happens. I have apparently some issues with how I ought to be doing stuff, but we'll just see if I can make that work. Looks like things are going now, so that's good. Alrighty. I'm sure by the time I figure this out exactly how it should go, how it should work, something will change, and then I'll have another fun tech snafu, and won't that be wonderful? Some people get really keyed up about never making mistakes. But I've always been a big fan of the idea that if you make a mistake, it's great to just own it and accept it and learn how to not do it again and to fix it if you can. So don't mind the weird noise. It is once again hot in Florida. Big news, I know. So, in other news, as soon as this is over, I'm going to be recording another episode of Mindless Banter podcast with DJ Pinchin and Scenic, which I am looking forward to. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. We are going to be talking about, it's going to be so far away. So we release them every, let's just say 6 weeks. But we have many recorded, and they take a while, you know, to edit and to polish and to put out into the world. So I think recently our third one just dropped, third or fourth. I think it was our third. But this is going to be, I think, number 9. So plenty more to come. And something for you to look forward to. Hopefully you guys find them entertaining and interesting. I think this one is going to be worthwhile for a lot of people that have concepts about hypnosis or ideas about hypnosis that may or may not be true for them or for anybody else. So we'll see what happens. Ooh, you know what? I made a video, I want to say like last week, of this gigantic, it's literally about this big on my finger. It's like massive cocktail ring that I got. It is so stunning. I wanted to bring it in here, but the why am I already live thing threw me off. So I will not be showing you that ring today, unfortunately. But I'm happy to talk about whatever other topics today that you might like. Now, I'm always happy to talk about things that we like to look at, things that are appealing and attractive to us. One thing that I think we might want to discuss here today, and with this group of people specifically, is there's a hypnosis without trance, right? It's a thing. It's been around forever, and different people have called it different names, or they give it their own special twist. Go folks who have to name things get really salty about it because just feel like only certain things need names. They don't have to be named after you, person. Anyway, whatever. Don't mind my saltiness. So, doing hypnosis without trance Why? What's the point? Well, a lot of people think that the state of trance, whatever that means, because everyone has it a little bit differently, is absolutely irrelevant. And for suggestion, it is, because, again, I've said this before, I'll say it again, you do not have to be in any special state to accept a suggestion given to you by somebody else, or a billboard, for example, that catches your fancy, catches your eye, a jingle that you hear. There's an auto parts store that I go by on my way to the warehouse most mornings, and every time I go by it, their jingle pops into my head. I have stopped in there to get some stuff, but they are not the only one around. They are not the only one in town. They're not the only one I go to. And I do just think it's funny the way that we can be primed and programmed really, really easily. I have been also, I was watching this article on, was it suggestibility? It was basically on the way that human beings become addicted to things, and we become addicted to things by having something be basically unstable. And by unstable, I mean not consistent. Like if something happens to you consistently, you can get used to it. You can get immune to it. But if something happens, like you push the button, you know, they're talking about pigeons and rats pushing buttons and getting food or cocaine or whatever it happens to be. So humans, this is a gambling thing, an addiction thing, right? So if a human being pushes a button and gets a prize out, they're going to go back because they want that prize. They have a reward center in their brain that says, oh, that thing was good for us. We want more of that. Even if the thing wasn't particularly good for us, we're like, oh, I want more of that. So, and that could be something like a drug. It could be something like an emotional response you had to a person. How many people out there have ever had a relationship where it was so exciting, you were all into it, and then like they turned out to be a horrible person, or they did or said a horrible thing to you, and you're just like, well, wait a minute. But the first part was so good, so you go back again and again, right? So human beings are sort of unique in that because they've determined that rats, if you stop giving them the reward, they don't go to that thing anymore. They're like, oh, it's turned off. But humans, we're not quite built the same way, so we keep going back again and again and again. That's why something like the name of that company, or the first part of a jingle, or some sort of saying, you know, that's what, you know, you can figure out the rest of that. Maybe I'd have to say one more word, but you get all four anyway. So our brains are programmed to look for these satisfying ends of things. Like we want to have the whole thing, bam, that's a very rewarding thing for our brain. It's like, oh, I know what that is, and we just automatically complete it, right? So if you're in this state where you are being hypnotized, ooh, that's weird. Let's see if I can fix that. Maybe, maybe not. Kind of weird. If you're in a state where your brain focuses on something, right? Focuses on something, will you automatically be drawn to it over and over and over again? I don't know. If you find yourself in that place where you think you know what's going to happen, do you automatically have to finish it? What does this have to do with trance anyway? So gambling is one of those things. Suggestibility is one of those things. Like we have discovered that we are in fact, hold on one second, it's driving me crazy. Oh, I don't know what's up with this. Why do things change when nothing has changed? It's a good day for me, I can tell. Okay, so the suggestions about, the idea that we can take in suggestions without a state of trance, pretty common. People have been doing it for a long time, and humans like the idea that we can pick something up or make some changes without that. So it's really intriguing to a lot of people because the scientific part of the hypnosis community doesn't care for trance at all. They're like, oh, we're always in some kind of trance state. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I feel like maybe there is sort of a baseline of when I'm awake and doing things. I don't know what those things might be, but anything for, some amount of time, I am in this state. And we could probably do, some kind of brain scans or EEGs or some kind of biofeedback to determine exactly what was going on in us, sort of all the time. If we had instead of having to put somebody in a big machine that made sure that they couldn't do anything else. Even if you imagine doing those other things, it's not quite the same as actually being in the world and doing those things. But if we had machines attached to us that could tell us really, really well what was going on in our brains, what parts of our brains were being active, what neurons are being fired, combining things with what we were doing so that we could tell that we were in this state versus another state, that would be really fascinating. But we don't really have that ability. We have this ability to put people in trance. We have this ability to put people in trance while they're in an fMRI. And we can tell that parts of their brain light up when they're in hypnosis or in trance that are different than other times. I made a face just there because I don't actually like the phrase in hypnosis. A lot of people use that, but for me, hypnosis is a specific idea where you are being given suggestions, whether you're giving them to yourself or somebody else is giving them to you so that you can make or enhance changes to yourself. That's what I think hypnosis is. It's more the act of accepting those suggestions as opposed to what state you're in when you're doing it, because I don't think the state's all that important. But in the recreational hypnosis, in the erotic hypnosis, maybe even in the stage hypnosis field, I don't know, but definitely in the recreational and erotic hypnosis communities, trance, that state of trance, whatever you call it and however you get there, usually feels so good for people that they want to be there. People want to be in a state of trance because it is different than I'm driving to work. I got up super early. I didn't want to get up early. I have to have caffeine in order to make this happen. I can't eat until I get to work, so I got to stop somewhere and get coffee and get a food. And then I go to the office and I'm happy to be here, right? Because we're so happy to be at an office, for example, if that's you. And so we get to this point where having the responsibility, having I have to constantly think about things and make decisions and change things happens and it feels good, but being in this state of trance, however you want to talk about it, is so overwhelmingly divine, right? How many people want to be blank and mindless? If you're in here and you want to be blank and mindless, just say blank and mindless. Just write it in the chat and tell me that you want to be blank and mindless because it feels good. If there is another reason that you want to go into trance, as opposed to simply taking in new suggestions and making changes to your thoughts, actions, and behaviors, totally fine. But if you want to be blank and mindless because trance in that state, that state that you get to be when you drop deeper, when you sink down, or whatever you want to call it, because it feels good for you. I mean, we can take suggestions and it doesn't have to feel good. I talk constantly about how we can accept quick suggestions, new quick suggestions. We can just make changes like that. And one of them I talk about is burning your hand on a hot stove. You don't want to do that ever again. So you learn really quickly, don't touch that thing when it's hot. How do I tell it's hot? You learn how to figure that out too, because you don't want to burn your hand again. So that's a painful thing. It doesn't feel good, but you just took in a suggestion. You've made a change. Probably wasn't the best one of your life. But we can go into trance and it just feels good. And it feels like it takes away our problems. And because hypnosis in that state is certainly powerful and certainly easy and certainly powerful, we can make suggestions and they can feel really good. And I've also said time and time again that when you introduce pleasure into the hypnosis that you're doing, that pleasure itself is a gateway to people accepting other suggestions. So if you are overwhelmed with erotic and personal pleasure because a hypnotist has dropped you into a trance state that you already wanted to be in because you know that being blank and mindless feels really good. And then they introduce some kind of pleasure into your brain and your body is just buzzing and everything feels so good. You are primed to accept suggestions that might be really great for you. Like, I think that that is the perfect time to introduce suggestions about doing things that are going to make your world better, doing things that are going to affect you personally, deeply, that maybe make the way you think about food or the way you think about exercise or the way you find yourself embracing doing things easier and better. And there's something fun about the idea that you can go so deeply in trance and it feels so good. And it's not like all the normal stuff you have to do, because it's not any of your chores, it's not any of your employment, it's not any of the I gotta get this thing done feeling, right? It's just time for you. It feels really amazing. It has all the hallmarks of everything that you really want out of life. And even if it's only like, this is the time when I get this tiny little vacation going on, you'll take it, because people get really easily burned out nowadays. There is so much going on that being able to take a break, being able to take a little vacation, being able to reset your brain, being able to feel good for 20, 45 minutes, however long you're there, it's great, right? So the idea that our unconscious minds are open to all kinds of suggestion, whether we're wide awake or deeply in trance, is one that I think is pretty widely accepted. The idea that you can be in trance or you could be wide awake and somebody gives you a suggestion. A lot of people are like, oh, I would never. You sure would. And sometimes all you have to do in order to accept a suggestion to do something that perhaps if you had time to think about it ahead of time, you'd be like, oh, that's on my no list. Sometimes all humans need is to have that idea brought up. And sometimes people bring up an idea multiple times to somebody else because, and they don't have to be in trance to do it, they just bring it up. This is something I really like. They drop it casually in conversation. They talk about it more pointedly. They say, hey, have you ever? And you're like, no, I've never. And maybe you never thought about it. But honestly, the more you think about it, especially the more you think about it really vividly, if there are any other, say, pleasure suggestions going on inside your head, and again, that can vary from person to person. It doesn't always have to be sexual or erotic pleasure in order for us to find our way to finding something acceptable. I mean, the world is a slippery slope if you're not careful. So the idea that you could be blank and mindless, the idea that you could accept suggestions, the idea that your brain is simply so open to other people's ideas for how you can act and think and behave, becomes this thing that we don't even recognize, because it's sort of this constant thing. We are always being given suggestions to buy things, to pay attention to things. If you are on any sort of social media that scrolls or rolls or has quick little segments, you're probably aware that they kind of feel like something that, you know, like potato chips. Oh, I just had this potato chip. Oh, it's really great. Oh, I just had this M&M. Oh, it's really great. And your brain says, oh, thank you. You've just given us, you know, salt and fat and carbs, and we like all those things. We can turn those into things that we can use. And your brain's like, oh, have another one. Why don't you have another one? So, you know, before too long, you had a little bowl of M&Ms or potato chips, or you had, you know, a whole never-ending scroll of somebody's dances or funny memes or cat videos. I can't get enough of those, by the way, cat videos. So the idea that we can find this stuff never ending is kind of compelling. But sometimes it's good to be able to be like, I'm going to make a stop. I'm going to stop this thing right here and clear my head, and then I can go on to other things. Post-hypnotic suggestions and wide awake. So what I am going to say about post-hypnotic suggestions and waking trances, does it have the same wonderful feeling as when you're in trance? So you could make it erotic, but what I would rather do, if I were given this suggestion, is I would have the action itself feel so good that you keep doing it, for example. So NLPers often use, they often use non-trance to make suggestions for people. So, for example, I've seen a bunch of demos where they bring somebody up on stage, and they're like, well, what would you like to do? What's your problem? What's going on? And then they have them think about that. So, like, for example, oh, you have a problem with X, Y, or Z. So I'd like you to go inside your brain and imagine, visualize, think about, remember any of those words cause us to search our memories for a thing that has happened in the past. As you're probably aware, anytime we remember something, we change little bits about it. Now, we may not change it a lot, we may just change it a little bit, but we change something about it. So every time you go in, if you want to make that change, we're already going into an altered state, which is one reason why that type of hypnosis or that type of activity definitely has some trance states associated with it. And you can make a trance state, or you can make accepting a suggestion feel really good. So for example, if you were given the suggestion that you really hated to see dirty dishes around your house, you hated the idea that there were dirty dishes in your house, and it always felt better to ensure that all the dishes in your house were clean at all times, not in a OCD type way. So, and, you know, it's not like you use a glass and you got to scrub it and everything's just got to be like you spend all your time doing that. No, but like in a casual way, like I always feel better when I go to sleep and all the dishes are done, for example, that type of thing. Or I always feel good when I clean up while I'm cooking. You know, that's in a lot of kitchens, that's how it's got to be. You've got to clean as you go, right? So you can attach to those suggestions that you give somebody the idea that every time they do that, every time they make sure that, say, all the dishes in the house are clean before they go to bed, that they receive the sense of satisfaction from doing the act itself, not necessarily from the having accepted the suggestion. But you could also do that. Like, I feel like a lot of people talk about how good it is to hear the sound of my voice, how good it is to obey me, how good it is to follow my instructions, because the more you find yourself doing those things, the more likely you are in the future to accept other suggestions. Because if these feel really good, maybe those will feel really good too, right? And the more suggestions feel really good, the more likely you are to just find them effortless to do. And that's a thing that we should talk about, because sometimes people think that it's really challenging to make change, or that it has to hurt, like touching the stove. It doesn't. Sometimes changes are quick and painless and really good for us. So how do we make those happen? Well, we can find something else that we do that we already really like to do. We can replace those two things. Maybe there's something that we really like to do, like maybe we like to come home and really eat, you know, not only the bowl of potato chips, but also the bowl of M&Ms, and then maybe that stack of cookies too, for example. And that does, believe it or not, give our brains some happy moments. And because it gives our brains those happy moments, we keep doing them. They make our mouth happy because things taste good. They make our brains happy because our brain's getting something that it can use. And then we get like a little pleasure neuron that goes, oh, this is good, do this again. Oh, this is good, do this again. Oh, this is good, do this again. So if you give yourself a suggestion, so if you take something like those things, just as an example, Those things that you already know that you like doing way too much. And then you take something that you don't like to do way too much, right? You can, the NLPs, folks have a thing called a swish pattern where you can swap them around. But maybe you don't want to, maybe like you eat something that you know isn't really bad for you. And you're like, but I get a lot of enjoyment out of this. But I would also like to get a lot of enjoyment out of doing this other thing that I ought to do, right? You can match it. You can basically take a look at your brain and say, how do I see this thing in my head? How do I hear this thing in my brain? What are all the senses that I'm engaged in when this thing happens to me, that I'm doing this thing that make me happy? How else can I take a different action and encode it the same way? So it's kind of like, for example, you have like a shiny Pokemon card, right? You really like it. Everything about it is so good. And then, you know, there's another one that could be good and you could use it in the same way, but it's just not as appealing to you. You always forget about it. You're flipping through your cards. It's not there, whatever. And so you just change it in your brain. You give it that shiny foil. You make it so that everything about it is very, very similar to the other card. For example, it doesn't have to be a card, but this is just an example of how we might envision something in our head. And so you give it the same characteristics and you put it in the same place. And it doesn't mean it has to be hiding the other one. They're just sort of literally both occupying the same kind of space, and you can think about one or you can think about the other, or you can think about them both. They're not going to, one won't overshadow the other. So you think about those things. And your brain has this idea about how it can make these things, you know, begin to have the same kind of pleasure or enjoyment from this new thing that you have from this other thing that you want to do. Let's see. You've never experienced a post-hypnotic suggestion. So, well, we're definitely going to do some hypnosis. We can start about now. It's about time to do some hypnosis. What kind of hypnosis would people like to do today? Like, what would a good suggestion for you be that you could experience after the fact? I mean, I'm sure that there are hundreds, if not thousands, that I have done, but it's always better if it's something that will resonate with you. So what's a suggestion? I will tell you that there is one that maybe somebody in here has, which is boop. Now, when I hear that personally, I'm always, my brain just wants to, like, I can reach out to the kitty cat and go like this, and she will boop her nose right up to my finger. It's really charming. So some people have a boop trigger. Some people have a stop in place trigger. Some people have a silence trigger. Stopping in place and being unable to speak are two of my favorite suggestions, but that may not make you happy at all, so you have to think about what might work for you. And you could do all sorts of other things, like today's a day when I'm going to, you know, just see how very deeply in trance I can go. I'm going to go, when we're done here, I'm going to go stand in front of a mirror and I'm going to watch my mirror self go into trance, and I'm going to follow it into trance. Like, that might be a good post-hypnotic suggestion. And that might be the thing that if you have a few minutes, you can find yourself going to do that safely, of course, keeping your eyes open, watching yourself go into trance. Maybe you close your eyes, I don't know. And however you find yourself doing it, it can be really quick and great. It can feel really amazing. You can come up after a few minutes, and that can be easy. I'm not really good with, like, I'm not a huge fan of things that might be awkward or embarrassing. I'm much more about something that would be like fun, or something that would be empowering, something that's cute. Like, I think, boop, I think that's kind of cute. It's not, I don't really want to choose. You tell me what you want to do and we'll find a way to make it happen. How about that? And if you don't choose, I might do something else, but I can't guarantee that there will be a post-hypnotic suggestion attached to it. So there are big, long lists. I have one on my website that you can look at for things that you might find yourself wanting to do. Some of those are pretty outdated by now. I'm not saying that they're all really fabulous, but there are a lot of them there. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them there. So if those are things you'd like to find yourself doing, all right, cool. So how about let's see what happens. So one of my problems is that sometimes when I talk, people automatically find themselves going into trance. It's because people have listened to my voice before. They know that I'm a hypnotist, and they are likely to just have their brains say something like, oh, Lee's talking, I should be in trance, let's just go there. And that's fine, because however you want to do it, let it happen. You know, I was at Hypnothoughts recently, and I would like to talk about an experience that did not work for me / for the person that I was out with. They were like, oh, I've never experienced like a handstick. I was like, oh, we could do it now. We're sitting down to dinner. So it did not work for them. The handstick did not work for them. And the reason it didn't work for them, they told me later, is because they didn't feel really comfortable. But we hadn't really talked about it. It was like a quick type of thing. And I feel okay with that because I always learn something about myself and the way I do things. And usually, if I'm doing hypnosis with somebody else, I tell them to get as comfortable as they possibly can. But we were out in public. It wasn't really a big deal. But I think that it is important for your brain to know what's safe, what isn't safe, how comfortable you can be, how comfortable you might not want to be. If something isn't safe for you, then by all means, feel free to say, I don't feel like doing it now, or I don't feel safe right now, or I'm not comfortable with this. So the way that your brain can take in suggestions without trance, with trance, let's go with trance right now. But I will give a suggestion, if any of you would like to accept it, that at some point in the future, you may discover that when somebody you trust gives you a suggestion that ordinarily you might think that you'd have to be in trance to accept, maybe your unconscious mind can simply allow you to accept it while you think you're conscious, while you think you're fully wide awake, while you're in not an altered state, but a usual state, whatever that means to you, and see how that goes. So take a nice deep breath in. I always breathe in through my nose and out through my nose if I can. I don't want to breathe in through my mouth. I'm not sure why, just how I am. But I like to breathe in through my nose. I can feel my body feeling heavier as I do that, as I breathe out. I like to have your brain, as you breathe in, bring you up a little closer to fully conscious, and as you breathe out, let you drop down more deeply into a comfortable state, maybe a compliant state, comfortable, compliant, cozy state, where your unconscious mind is wide open, and your conscious self may or may not be paying attention at all. Maybe your conscious self is paying attention to something different. I don't know what that is. Maybe your conscious self can think about what it's paying attention to, and it can spend all the time that I spend talking thinking about what it's paying attention to, while your unconscious mind pays attention to the things that I say and just accepts those suggestions and lets them settle in. And while your unconscious mind accepts those suggestions and they settle in into your mind, into your body, so that you find yourself acting on these things in the future, you can just let yourself drop down deeper and deeper. You can feel yourself give in a little bit more easily, a little bit more powerfully. And the more you find yourself in that state of giving in to the feeling in your body, maybe you find yourself feeling like you're drifting a little bit. Can you feel that you're drifting a little bit and dropping at the same time? Drifting and dropping. It's always safe. There's always some place soft that looks like it's just exactly where you might land. But maybe you find yourself just keeping on landing on soft places, and then you sink a little bit more, and then there's another really super comfy, soft place for you to land. And every time you land, you've breathed out and you've landed somewhere new, and every time you breathe in, Come up a little bit. You breathe out and you drop down more deeply somewhere else, to some nice, soft, cozy place that your brain really wants to be. And your unconscious mind just feels how important it is for you to give in. Your unconscious mind can feel how good it is for you to drop down deeper and deeper. So what kind of suggestion would you like to find yourself responding to today? So a suggestion that I love, if you already have this one, you don't have to take this in again. You probably already have it. Maybe you'll just find yourself doing it. That when you hear the word boop, you find yourself automatically tapping your nose with your fingers and saying that word boop out loud, that sound, that word. And your unconscious mind can think how funny that is and how fun that is and how silly and how harmless it is, and everything about that is just fun and playful. Remember that if a suggestion is not right for you, you can find yourself rejecting or adjusting it to be something else that you do like, that you do find comforting, that you do want to make happen. And the more your unconscious mind accepts a suggestion, the stronger and better it can get. Your unconscious mind can know that it just takes a suggestion that your brain goes yes to for you to find that you can do it now and from now on. You can do it now until the end of time. You could be 95, sitting out on that porch, watching the sunset, and you hear boop, and you go boop. But however it happens for you, let your unconscious mind think about the fun of that. And additionally, allow your unconscious mind to think about how, when this session is over, maybe you haven't really watched yourself go deeply into trance and you'd like to know what that looks like. So you're going to find a mirror in your house. You're probably going to stand and look at it, but who knows? And you're going to watch that mirror, and you're going to watch the person in the mirror go into trance. You might notice that the eyes start to blink a little bit differently, maybe more slowly, maybe double blinks. I can double blink, but it's not quite the same as a double blink of someone who's going into trance. So maybe you can find yourself staring at that person in the mirror and waiting for that double blink to happen. Would you even notice it? If you don't notice it, maybe you notice that parts of the face turn a little bit more red. Maybe you notice that the muscles on the face are a little looser, a little more slack. Maybe you notice that the mouth is open. Maybe you notice that you can see them swallowing. Maybe you notice that they start to drool a little bit. I don't know what you're going to notice. But as you watch that person in the mirror go into trance, maybe you'll go into trance with them. Maybe you find that it's irresistible to go into trance with them. And maybe the more you find yourself staring at that person in the mirror going into trance and going into trance with them, the more you realize that your unconscious mind is capable of understanding which suggestions are good and useful for you and which ones you can find yourself following along with at any time and making happen whenever it's safe and appropriate to do so. And knowing that there are other suggestions that your brain can stop just accepting wholesale. And your brain can just go, no, I don't want to accept that suggestion. It's the wrong time, it's the wrong place, it's the wrong suggestion. But however you find yourself doing it, allow your unconscious mind to know that it's powerful, that it can make any or all changes, that your life, your thoughts, the way you behave can be infinitely stronger and better for you and what you do now and for the long run. And let your unconscious mind really hold on to the fact that you're worth it, you're powerful, you're amazing. A lot of people don't believe that about themselves. They don't believe how good they are. They don't believe how capable they are. They're unconfident about their own abilities. But your unconscious mind is pretty darn strong and amazing and really good on a regular basis for doing all sorts of things. So let your unconscious mind really accept that idea. Let your unconscious mind accept the idea that every single part of you is valuable and useful, and the more you find yourself working together, the stronger you get. The more you work together to make sure that you're getting the outcome you want. Not just the lizard brain output that you may have found yourself doing that makes you do the same stupid things over and over and over again. But your brain can know that there are new things you want to do. Your brain can know that there are new habits and patterns and actions that you want to take. And your unconscious mind can make those things so appealing to you that you find yourself doing those. And those things that aren't as good for you, your brain can be like, we've done an analysis and we've realized that we've been putting in a lot of energy, or maybe even you haven't been putting in a lot of energy because brains like to be efficient, but we've been putting energy toward doing this thing. But we've realized that doing that thing doesn't really make us happy. So we're going to change to doing something new, and we're going to discover if that makes us happier as a whole. We're going to discover if those outcomes are better for us. And your unconscious mind can go boop and tap your nose right now, perhaps, if you think that that would be a fun idea, to allow your unconscious mind from now on to simply have the ability to allow you to change your behavior from now on whenever it will affect you positively and powerfully for now and for the long run. But remember, even if I tell you something about making changes for the long run, please remember that if a change does not serve you well, like you don't want to be, say, getting a brand new job and making a big keynote speech at something and then going boop and touching your nose. That might be inappropriate. So you want to have a little bit of discernment going on. Your unconscious mind can scan and go, how are we feeling with these things that we've been doing? And as long as you find yourself knowing that the things that you are now doing, as opposed to things you used to do, are making you happier, are better for you overall, then you keep doing them. And if not, you make new changes and you make new adjustments and you make things better for yourself. You can think of yourself as an experiment. You can think of your life as an experiment. You can decide that you're going to keep doing a lot of things, 99.9% of them the same way, and then you make like a tiny little change and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm seeing the world in a whole new way. I'm hearing what people say in a different way than I ever did before. I'm feeling really good about myself, and I feel like I'm in control of things. I feel like I can make things happen in a way that suits me. However your brain takes these suggestions, do it for yourself in a way that it is powerful for you, that it is good for you, that is acceptable for you. Let your brain hold on to those things, and then on a count of 10, find yourself coming up all the way, feeling as good as you possibly can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wide awake in case you were deeply in trance. So, I don't know what it is that you might have found yourself doing ahead of time, whether you went into trance or whether you were wide awake or whether you just thought you were wide awake and maybe you were just staring off into the distance the whole time. I do not know. But let your unconscious mind hold on to those thoughts and those ideas. Let them settle in wherever they are going to help you the most. If you find yourself doing something after this fact, let it happen. See how it goes. Tell us about it. And if you find yourself not doing anything, that's okay too. That was a good decision for you to make at the time. So let yourself hold on to those things. And then, again, come all the way back up and just say hi. In just a few minutes, we're going to wrap this up. But your brain can know that you can always come back and listen to something. You can always go listen to any of the other ones that have been posted before and see what the hypnosis portion was and to figure out if those things are going to be fun for you or not. And as always, I want to thank you for being here. I would like to thank you for your support. If you are not a subscribed member of my channel, I'm very close to having 3,000 of those, which isn't a lot, but it's a lot for me. So if you aren't subscribed and you like hypnosis, please do subscribe. I would appreciate it. Come back. I'm usually here every Sunday about 3 p.m. Eastern doing some kind of ramble about hypnosis and then some kind of trance or some kind of hypnosis without trance. So take your pick. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to say goodbye in just a moment, but I absolutely do want to say that I appreciate you being here, and I hope to see you again next week. So thanks and goodbye.